From Interfaith Alliance, this is The State of Belief. I'm Interfaith Alliance President Reverend Paul Brandeis Raushenbush in New York City. This week, Interfaith Alliance convened a national call to action for faith communities, bringing together leaders of the largest and most effective pro-democracy organizations in the country. In his marathon speech in the chamber this week, Senator Cory Booker kept coming back to one cornerstone message. This is not about right and left, but about right and wrong. And that's exactly right. Get ready to find out how Americans of diverse faiths and beliefs, how you can mobilize for the hands-off National Day of Action on Saturday, April 5th, and into the future. Coming up today on The State of Belief, you'll be hearing from Move On Executive Director Rana Epting, Indivisible Co-Executive Director Leah Greenberg, Bishop Dwayne Royster, who is the Executive Director at Faith in Action, Gage CEO Wael Al-Zayat, Ben the Ark Jewish Action CEO Jamie Barron, Maria J. Stephan, co-lead and chief organizer at the Horizon Project, and the Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, director of the Cairo Center for Religions, Right, and Social Justice, as well as a co-director of the Poor People's Campaign. We need voices like these heard more now than ever, so please make sure you subscribe, share, and rate The State of Belief at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. And you can help grow The State of Belief with a financial contribution right now. Find out how at stateofbelief.com, and you can support and join the work of Interfaith Alliance at interfaithalliance.org. Before we get started, there's something I want to get on your radar. Interfaith Alliance is working with faith communities around the country to hold our representatives accountable. We are holding faith town halls, where we invite our representatives to hold town halls so we can talk to them about what they're doing in Washington and if they reflect our morals. If you are interested in getting involved, please go to the Interfaith Alliance website and look for Faith Town Halls on our website and find how you can sign up and even hold one potentially in your own community. I also want to encourage you to look in your local community and see if there is a hands-off action that is happening this Saturday. There's over 1,000 happening across the country, so chances are there might be one in your community. It's great to show up and just be able to raise our voice and say, not this, not now, not ever. You can find more information at www.handsoff2025.com. And now to this incredible lineup of leaders, all coming together with urgency and hope for a national call to action for faith communities. Welcome to everyone. We are so glad that you are here today. I am thrilled because I am here with some amazing faith leaders, as well as progressive organizers, activists, and brilliant minds coming together for this call. And as much as I'm excited for the people who will be sharing their wisdom and inspiration with us today, I am even more excited about all of you who are joining right now this call, this national call to action for faith communities. This is an incredible moment. We're so glad that you answered the call and that you are here, and for all that you're doing and all that you will be doing for this fight for democracy that we're in. This call is about recognizing what's at stake in this moment and considering, recognizing, and mobilizing the power that we have as diverse faith communities to be in this moment in the most impactful way possible. And part of that is working together with one another across diverse religious traditions, multiplying our power to meet this important moment for our democracy. And another part of that is to be collaborating, new partnerships in new ways with amazing progressive grassroots organizations like Move On, like Indivisible, who are also here tonight. It will take all of us to show up and say no to this authoritarian administration. The only way through it is together, and we're coming together tonight. Before we begin, it's just worth taking a moment to name the stakes of where we are, in our country. It is a terrible moment that we're in. People are being abducted and disappeared without due process. There's an attempt to legislate trans people out of existence. There's attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is another way of attacking Black dignity, Black rights. There's an effort to degrade, dissemble, corrode our government bodies that administer really life-giving, life-supporting organizations like Social Security, like Medicare, like Medicaid, like SNAP, like Veterans Affairs. And, we are in a moment where oligarchs are making decisions about our budget that benefit themselves, that attack the poor and harm the poor and the disenfranchised. And so the stakes are really high. Not to mention for our democracy itself, which feels like it is hanging in the balance. And the other piece that is maybe less noticed, but so important for us tonight on this faith call, is that religion itself is being attacked. That this administration is the most hostile to religion and religious expression that we have seen in recent memory. The way we all saw the way Bishop Buddy was attacked for just speaking about mercy from her own pulpit. And she was attacked, and the president said, "You should apologize." And people were passing resolutions in Congress to censor her. And that was just the start. The Catholic bishops were accused of, cushioning their bottom line. The Lutherans were accused of money laundering by Elon Musk on Twitter. Groups like Islamic Relief and Hayas have been attacked for their work with refugees. These are ways that religious communities are operating in the world, and they've been attacked from the beginning of this administration. And one of the most important things to recognize tonight is that we have been among the most courageous in pushing back. And that's what Skye Perryman from Democracy Forward said. She said, among the most courageous people right now are religious communities who are not bending the knee, who are not kissing the ring. And so tonight is an extension of that courage, an extension of that love that we have for one another and for the potential of our democracy together. So I am delighted that you are here. Part of the glory of tonight is that religious communities have been there all along in moments when we have been able to push this country forward. And so we're in that moment right now. And so just, I hope this feels as exactly what you need right now as we think about the action on Saturday, which I want to mention, and all the things that you are doing in your community. So I am going to move along and bring into the conversation an amazing thought leader, activist, a brilliant mind, Maria J. Stephan. She's the co-lead and chief organizer of the Horizon Project. Maria, welcome. And please, why don't you just take it away and give some context to what we're talking about tonight?
Sure. Well, thanks so much, Paul. And it's really a delight to be on this call with so many friends on the call and with you all joining from across the country and who knows, maybe from across the world. Thank you so much to Interfaith Alliance for hosting us. And I can't think of anything I need more than having a conversation with faith communities about how we can respond, fight back, resist, and unite in this moment of resurgent authoritarianism in the country. So I co-lead the Horizons Project, and we are focused on supporting the broadest possible movement to defeat this ugly authoritarianism that we're experiencing in the U.S. and to build a society where all people can live freely and have their basic needs met. And we know that both in this country and around the world, religious actors and communities have both provided moral and material cover to authoritarian and fascist regimes. We know that religious frames, symbols, and organizations have been used to justify racial and ethnic hierarchies, to rally people around ultra-nationalist appeals, and to consolidate authoritarian control. And of course, nowhere is this truer than in the United States. But at the same time, faith leaders and communities have been the driving force for many of the most momentous struggles for freedom and democracy in the United States and globally. So I grew up in the Catholic tradition, and I must say I was deeply inspired by people like Dolores Huerta, like Cesar Chavez, like Dorothy Day, the Berrigan brothers, and others who knew how to put their faith in action and lead some of those powerful movements for social, political, economic justice. And it turns out that faith actors have been playing a critical role in successful pro-democracy movements around the world. My former colleagues at the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is that independent agency that was recently dismantled and illegally shut down by DOJ in a very tragic, thing that's been happening there. So, and this was also a place where I worked for 5 years as the director of the program on nonviolent action. So my colleagues at USIP were studying pro-democracy movements around the world, and they found that religion played a prominent role in over 50% of major nonviolent campaigns from the period of 1945 to 2013. So what does this look like in practice? Well, we know that faith leaders and communities have used their moral authority to speak truth to power and to be persuaders for democracy. In 2001, when the Zambian president Chiluba attempted to manipulate the country's constitution and run for a third presidential term, which, by the way, we may see attempted in this country, the 3 national church bodies for Catholics, Protestants, and evangelicals issued a joint declaration condemning Chiluba's action. Then, when the government banned pro-democracy demonstrations, the churches went beyond statements. They organized pro-democracy prayer gatherings, which the government could not ban, and ultimately Chiluba was forced to abandon his plans. Then in Hungary, you've seen evangelical and other religious leaders release the Advent Statement in 2019, which was based on the 1934 Barmen Declaration denouncing the Nazification of German churches under Adolf Hitler. And the statement condemned the autocratic Orban government's centralization of power and repression of minorities. And of course, Paul referenced Episcopal Bishop Miriam Buddy's, truth to power moment during the inaugural prayer service. So we also know that religious networks drive organization. They broaden participation and mobilize resources for nonviolent movements. And this is the research that I've done over the past quarter century or so has found that the most successful pro-democracy movements feature mass diverse participation from the broadest possible range of groups in society. And faith networks can mobilize, can bring people together, can bring them into action. And nowhere was this truer than during the U.S. civil rights movement, which I would consider our greatest anti-authoritarian pro-democracy movement in our history, when Black churches and networks like the Southern Christian Leadership Conference joined forces with unions, with students and other civic organizations to mobilize large numbers of people to participate in the bus boycotts, the lunch counter sit-ins, the freedom rides, and other campaigns of organized non-cooperation that dismantled Jim Crow. And of course, we know that church basements and Quaker meeting houses hosted trainings in nonviolent resistance. Faith networks raised strike funds and other resources that sustained the movement. And during the Arab Spring uprisings, which is when I first met with Wael on this call, and especially in Syria, you saw during the uprising that the most powerful marches and demonstrations emerged from the mosques following the Friday prayers. So it was a source of organization and mobilization. So we've also seen that faith actors have helped mitigate violence and repression, targeting protesters, and they've helped movements remain resilient. So one of the classic examples of this was during the Philippines People Power Revolution in 1986, when nuns put themselves in front of demonstrators to protect them from the military, who were given instructions to shoot at the protesters. So the sisters' brave act ended up playing a critical role in convincing the military not to fire, which facilitated their defection away from the Marcos regime. And then more recently in India, when Modi's Hindu nationalist government attempted to push through a series of farm bills that would have gutted protections for farmers in 2020, the Sikh community played a critical role in sustaining nationwide protests led by farmers' unions. So Sikh langar halls, which are community kitchens that serve free food to all people, provided sustenance to the farmers throughout the campaign, which was successful in pushing back against these bills. And so, and importantly, religious beliefs provide transformative visions, messages of hope, a sense that victory is inevitable, which sustains a nonviolent struggles in the face of hardship and repression. Of course, autocrats want us to believe that resistance is futile and we are powerless to change things. So this is where we need hope. We need the belief that we can win, which faith grounding and spiritual practice can provide us with and have provided us with. And along these lines, religious rituals foster a sense of unity and shared purpose. Music. Is there any successful movement that we've had that has not featured music and freedom songs grounded in sacred texts? Such a powerful part of so many movements, from the civil rights movement to the present. Also internationally, so in Hong Kong, during the Umbrella Movement challenging China's autocratic encroachment, protesters arrived at the demonstrations with Bibles in hand, sang hymns like Sing Hallelujah to the Lord at demonstrations. Youth groups held prayer circles calling for peace and a redemption of the police. So, one of the most powerful acts of nonviolent action in the context of these movements has been non-cooperation. So this includes economic boycotts, strikes, walkouts, civil disobedience. Faith communities have been at the forefront of campaigns of non-cooperation. Of course, all of the most significant campaigns during the civil rights movement featured organized non-cooperation. In South Africa, non-cooperation by Christian clergy played a key role in resisting apartheid, including by supporting consumer boycotts of white-owned businesses, which paved the way to the democratic transition. And in Myanmar, Buddhist monks have overturned their alms bowl as a sign of non-cooperation with the military junta. And today, of course, in the US, what does non-cooperation by faith leaders look like? It looks like refusing to comply with legally questionable ICE immigration roundups in places of worship and filing lawsuits to that effect. Faith leaders have organized freedom schools to teach a more accurate account of US history in the face of government attacks on DEI. Faith leaders have responded to anti-DEI efforts by calling for a Target fast during the Lenten season, encouraging supporters to boycott and support Black-owned businesses and alternative. So these are just a few of the many things that faith leaders and communities have done. All of them are critically needed in this moment to be able to bring people together, unite across difference, put pressure on those that are upholding this authoritarian system that we have, and to give people a sense that change and victory is possible. I would just leave that today, actually, Horizons launched with Protect Democracy, the Faithful Fight Toolkit. So this features strategies and tactics that are focused on nonviolent organizing, advocacy, resilience, and resistance. Otherwise, I will turn things back over to Paul, and thank you for having the opportunity to speak with you tonight.
Maria, thank you so much. That was so rich and full of exactly what we need right now, tangible, wonderful information. I'd like to invite now our next four speakers, the Reverend Dr. Liz Theoharis, the director of the Cairo Center for Religion, Rights, and Social Justice, Bishop Dwayne Royster, Executive Director of Faith in Action, Wael Al-Zayat, CEO of Engage, and Jamie Beeran, CEO of Bend the Arc Jewish Action. To all four of you, thank you so much for being here. Why don't you go ahead, Reverend Liz, and start us off, and then we'll go in that order: Bishop Royster, Wael, and then Jamie.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Paul. What a blessing to be with everyone here this evening. The community here that's gathered gives me hope in hard times, is a balm in this sin-sick soul of a nation that we're living in. Tomorrow is the anniversary of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's I've Been to the Mountaintop speech, his last sermon in Mason Temple in Memphis, Tennessee, where he reminded garbage collectors and low-wage workers, lawyers and government folk, faith people, faith leaders and teenagers in the city that they needed to continue and fight. They needed to cry out, hands off, to the authorities of their day. Dr. King told the people that evening, and I think it's a good message for us to hear today, we are determined to be people. We are saying that we are God's children and that we don't have to live like we are forced to live. To me, Dr. King's message sounds a lot like hands off our healthcare, hands off our democracy, hands off our education. And it sounds like prophetic calls for justice throughout the decades, centuries, and millennia. Don't you hear James 5, one of my favorite Bible passages? The wages you fail to pay your workers are crying out against you. Their cries have reached the ears of God. We are determined to be people, or hands off our jobs and Social Security and SNAP benefits sound like, woe to you who issue oppressive decrees to deprive the poor of their rights, making homeless children their prey. We are determined to be people. This is not a moment to lower our standards, to throw up our arms and say we know things are bad and we should just adjust and get used to it, or that we can't do anything, we don't have the power. Those powers and principalities are just too powerful. Instead, Dr. King reminds us we are God's children. We don't have to live like we are forced to live. And this is why I'm so excited to be taking part in the April 5th events and this kind of larger arc of mobilizing and organizing that's sweeping the nation. This is why the Cairo Center is organizing poor and impacted people and faith and moral leaders to come together and cry out, hands off, or woe to those who use and abuse Christianity in the name of injustice. Instead, we're taking back our dignity. We're taking back our humanity. So what I want to do with the last minute that I have is to share some songs and litanies and materials that we've put together that are included in the toolkit for this Saturday's events. I think some of them are actually really useful for folks to turn out and try to gather with people. These materials are in the toolkit that folks that have signed up to be a part of Saturday's actions and events are, it's included right in there. And there's songs and they're hyperlinked and you can hear other people singing them so that you can lead them yourself. Things like Neighbor, Neighbor, Can't You See? Democracy is what we need. Or I went down to the rich man's house and I took back what he stole from me. Here in New York City, we're actually marching by a couple of billionaires' houses and we're going to be singing these songs on Saturday. There's this kind of band together, hold each other song. There's Rise Up. We're going to rise up. We ain't going to let nobody turn us around because the people united will stand our ground. There's songs that have been coming out of different movements like Maria was talking about. One from the Southern Tenant Farmers Union. There are mean things happening in this land. And indeed, that's what we know, and it's happening all around us. But the movement's going on and the movement's growing strong. And so I just want to make sure folks know that these resources, litanies, interfaith materials, calls to action, all exist. They're yours to use. And I look forward to seeing folks in the streets and in the community as we stand together and cry out, hands off.
Dr. Liz, I hate coming behind you. That was powerful. Thank you. And thank you for all the songs for the movement that we need right now, too. We need fresh songs and fresh material to speak to this moment. So good evening, everybody. I'm Bishop Dwayne Royster, Executive Director of Faith in Action. Faith in Action is a faith-based organizing movement here in the U.S. and beyond. We're in about 24 states around the country where we organize multi-faith, multi-race, multi-class folk around racial and economic justice on a livable planet. And we're also in 12 countries outside the United States doing that work, organizing as well. As a matter of fact, I just got back from El Salvador on Saturday and was over there learning from our siblings in El Salvador how to fight in an authoritarian regime and the work that they're doing on the ground with thousands of people that they've been moving over the course of the last several years. I want to start by saying that I have been wrestling with a couple of quotes that continue to keep me up at night. One is from the late Dr. Howard Thurman in his book, Jesus and the Disinherited. I'd like to say it came from one of the chapters, but it was actually in the foreword that he wrote, when the introduction, when he asked the question, what does your faith have to say to people with their backs up against the wall? And then the other quote that is constantly getting me motivated and getting me up and moving is Fannie Lou Hamer, who said, "I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired." This is a particular moment that we're living in right now, where actually faith, I think, really has an answer for the moment that we are living in. I'm reminded that the various faith traditions that are represented here and some that are not represented here today tell a story of people over thousands of years who have seen times just like this, times of oppression and times of tyranny, times of authoritarianism and dictators, times of people that actually were fighting against the very people of God that we knew God wanted to flourish and thrive. And that in that particular place and in that particular time, God gave them strength, not only for that particular moment that they were living in, but also God was able to help to root them in a new reality of better days ahead. That to help them understand that they did not have to stay caught in a cycle of the moment that they were living in, but they actually had agency and were agents in carrying out God's will in the world for a better world to be able to come. And I believe, honestly, without a shadow of a doubt, that this is the moment that we are in as people of faith and moral courage right now. Many of us will be out on April 5th, standing on street corners and standing in front of institutions all across this country, demanding without a shadow of a doubt, hands off our climate, hands off our Medicaid, hands off our SNAP, hands off our schools, hands off our healthcare, hands off so many different things. We'll be standing up to do that. But at the same time that we're doing that, while we want to show up for that one day, that's not enough. We've got to organize. We've got to build power. We've got to build an imagination about the future that we want. Paul Tillich, the late theologian, would have called this an ontological moment of ontological shock, where the reality that most people have lived in is gone. The beauty of faith is that we can take people in shock, we can root them in a new reality of a world yet to come, in a world that they have a chance to be able to build, where they are able to flourish and thrive, where all of our children have a quality education, we can drink the water and breathe the fresh air that we need, that our children are treated decently by the police forces that are around them, that they are actually able to go about their daily lives, that they're actually able to have access to health care, and they can get the vaccines they need to keep them safe and sound, and that all of the resources that are going to make for a great civil society are ones that faith are driving every single day. So as I get ready to wrap up here in my good Baptist voice, as I get ready to wrap up here, my first wrap up, that I want to say that part of our call in this particular moment is to change the damn world. Why? Because too many people wake up feeling like they live in hell every day already. And we know that there's a better way and a better world for them to be able to live in. We also are called in this moment to be architects of a new America. The America that we know is falling apart, but this is also a moment when we can rebuild it better than it ever has been, that we could actually live into the framework of our founders of this country, and that we could actually have equality, we could have dignity, we could have respect, and that every person, every human being that's here could actually have a say in the society that we live in. We want to be able to empower all of God's children to be able to live their full best lives. Their children are happy and laughing and their bellies are full. There's no bigger vision than that in this world. Not just white children or black children or Latinx children or Asian Pacific Islander children or indigenous children or biracial children, but all children are able to have laughter, have their bellies full, and to be able to enjoy one another. And then finally, we are writing a new story about faith in this country because it's been hijacked, brutalized, torn apart, ripped to shreds. It's been made an idolatrous religion for white supremacy and white Christian nationalism. And so that we need to write a new faith narrative that talks about faith is hopeful, and faith is inclusive, and faith is welcoming, and faith is empowering, and faith is liberating, and faith is transforming. That's the work that's in front of us right now. But you can begin that process to take the first step to show up on April 5th with thousands, hundreds of thousands of your neighbors around the country and say, hands off, enough is enough. We want our country back. We're determined to take ownership of that which is ours. Thank you so much for having me, Reverend Paul, Dr. Liz, everybody that's on this call. We so deeply appreciate you and all of you that have shown up and are joining us right now.
Up next, much more from a national call to action for faith communities as we gear up for the April 5th Hands Off National Day of Action. That's coming this Saturday. You can hear full episodes of The State of Belief anytime on our website at stateofbelief.com. You'll also find links to topics we discussed this week, as well as transcripts and more. And make sure you subscribe at stateofbelief.com/subscribe. You're listening to The State of Belief, where religion and democracy meet. Welcome back to The State of Belief. I'm Interfaith Alliance President, Reverend Paul Brandeis Raushenbush. The Hands Off National Day of Action is Saturday, April 5th. In preparation, Interfaith Alliance brought together the leaders of Move On, Indivisible, Faith in Action, Engage, Bend the Arc Jewish Action, the Horizon Projects, and the Kairos Center for Religions, Rights, and Social Justice to take part in an urgent national call to action for faith communities. Here's more from that event. Well, Al, would you go next?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening, everyone. Peace upon you. Assalamu alaikum. And Eid Mubarak to those celebrating. For those who don't know, Engage is a national voter mobilization organization for Muslim voters. We deeply care and believe in our pluralistic democracy and the value of human rights at home and abroad. We are rooted in our Islamic values and traditions of justice, compassion, and standing up for the oppressed. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ entered the city of Medina, he stressed the importance of supporting the weak, helping the oppressed, and spreading peace. That's a fundamental tenet of Islamic activism, to be on the side of the oppressed, which involves advocating for them, which is so sorely needed right now. What we're seeing is the opposite from our government and from our leaders. Another core value is speaking truth to power. Whenever one witnesses something evil, let him change it with his hand, and if he's unable, then with his tongue, and if he's unable, then with his heart. But that is the weakest form of faith. This is the faith that I grew up knowing and living, and that millions and billions, in fact, of Muslims know. But here we're seeing it degraded, assaulted, and to some degree weaponized in the name of religion. But we have to speak truth to power. Muslim voters in particular have suffered extreme hardship and pain because of the excesses of the state. And this goes back many generations. We endured and we still endure the ramifications, the consequences of what we're seeing in the Middle East, in Gaza in particular. But now our very democracy, our pluralistic democracy, is being undone. But we are clear-eyed on the need to come together to stand up for immigrants, students, workers, the poor, the marginalized, not allow those who are weak to suffer in silence, and that all our freedoms are intertwined. This is why we organize year-long to ensure that Muslims and other communities of faith or no faith traditions are voting in all elections and holding their elected accountable. That's why we work in coalitions to protect the freedom of speech, voting rights, civil rights, religious freedom, and not allow the far right to allow us to turn against one another, no matter what our disagreements are. I am someone who grew up under a dictatorship. I grew up in Syria, as Maria knows, born and raised. I know what it's like to be afraid of the government. to be afraid to speak your mind, to wonder if your neighbors are spying on you and reporting you to the police. The secret police that could come at any time in the night and kidnap you forever, simply because of something you said or your political belief. Sounds familiar? And now I gotta tell you, as a first generation immigrant, I cannot believe that this is happening here. It's extremely sad for me, but also as a former government official myself. I served in the federal government for 10 years as a U.S. diplomat at the State Department. I was the person our country sent to other countries to educate them about democracy and rule of law and minority rights. And now it's needed here. You know, what drives me at Engage and our volunteers, our staff, our supporters, and our allies is this sense of urgency that the work that was needed up there, abroad, in less fortunate countries, is needed here. And the work to protect American democracy is priority number one. For too long, we have seen those values, those principles degrading slowly, particularly against vulnerable communities like Muslim communities, like the Black community, like immigrants, like the poor. And now it has metastasized. And now it's targeting everyone. We've been warning about it, and now it's here. And we have no option but to fight it. We fight it by organizing. We fight it by turning out the vote. We protest. We also support good people in office and good people in government, policymakers, people of conscience, people who are values aligned. And we build for the future. We invest in our talent. Our students are being targeted. They're being deported. They're being silenced. That is our future. We must protect them and invest in them. We must invest in those losing their jobs in government, in policy, who are being deterred from using their expertise for good. We need to take care of them now. This is why Engage is working with this network of experts that are out there to help them in any way that we can to keep them relevant, energized, hopeful, and ready to return triumphantly. And I am so honored that Engage can be a part of this journey and this fight. We began it a long time ago, and I have a feeling it's going to continue for a long time. But that is the way it is, and we're ready for it. We're excited to be part of this collective. We urge everyone, as you've heard, to be out there with us on April 5th and beyond. Let's do it. It can be done. Previous generations have done harder things to give us what we have today that we're about to lose. And not only do we need to protect it, but we need to strengthen it. So hopefully this chapter will be the last chapter of its kind in American history. Assalamu alaikum.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much, Reverend Paul, and everyone who organized this really wonderful gathering tonight. My name is Jamie Beeran. I lead Bend the Arc Jewish Action, and we organize our multiracial, multi-ethnic Jewish community around domestic issues, and we're really proud to be part of this wider multi-faith movement for justice that's represented on this call tonight. And when I was invited to speak here, I had to really think about which story to tell of all of the inspirations around me, from our Torah and all through our Tanakh, from our rabbis and our kohanot, our cantors and activists, our elders, siblings, and children. There's just so much wisdom to draw from. And I really wanted to think about a story that would resonate for us here and for this moment. For we who have found this special time with each other, just this brief moment, knowing that when our eyes return to the wider world, we may well see one that is demonstrably more dangerous than it was even an hour ago. And so which story from our Jewish tradition would warn us of the trials ahead while also reminding us of our power? And so I want to tell the story of the Erev Rav, which is the mixed multitude. As Passover approaches in just a few weeks, you will likely hear the story of our exodus from Egypt. But what you're less likely to hear is in that story that we didn't leave alone. We left with Egyptians who joined us, some who saw their liberation tied with ours, some who didn't want to live in an oppressive state, even if they themselves weren't enslaved, and some who may have just come along for the ride and found some community along the way. And as the story goes, our ancestors wandered the desert with them, and they searched for the promised land. And I think we all know that you don't just wander through the desert with someone you don't trust, someone who had not shared water with you along the way, someone who you did not provide your blanket to at night. And some in our Jewish community today, especially those in power over some of our legacy institutions, want to forget that story and blame our struggles on those who came with us. Want to act solely for our perceived safety, not only alone and isolated, not only by emulating the behavior of our oppressors, but sometimes going as far as to join our oppressors. Some who join the pharaohs of today are manipulated into thinking that that's where our safety lies, and others know that they're being used, hoping to later outsmart the far-right white supremacists that they are dancing with and both put all of us at risk. Why? Because the far right at the helm of our government today knows that the biggest obstacle to their undemocratic minority, the one that's seizing full control of our liberties and of our lives, as my colleagues here tonight spoke about so beautifully, is our majority, our progressive multi-faith majority, a room that probably looks a lot like this, but multiplied by millions of us. And if we all vote together like we just did in Wisconsin, we win. And if we all march together like we're going to do this weekend, we win. And if all who are workers strike together, we can bring the heels of this nation to a halt until everyone is safe and win. So from Trump to Musk, today's pharaohs target our majority and harm our communities with wedge issues. Everything from who can use what bathroom and where, who can say on what on campus and when, who is qualified for a job and why, who can live in this country and how. And anti-Semitism is also a wedge issue. Today's pharaohs use real Jewish pain, fear, and trauma to break up our multi-faith, multiracial majority and to attack the institutions that we've built, that teach us to think critically and that keep the powerful in check. And those of us, like me, whose job it is to actually fight anti-Semitism, we call this smokescreen anti-Semitism, because these modern-day pharaohs, they use very real anti-Semitism, exaggerated anti-Semitism, and sometimes even very fake claims of anti-Semitism to cover their anti-Semitism and to cover for how they're destroying the institutions built to prevent their authoritarian agenda. They do this while they continue to cite the Great Replacement conspiracy theory that motivated mass shootings of us as we prayed, many of us on this call as we prayed, while they throw Nazi salutes and engage with and promote white nationalists, and while they dismantle the institutions that keep us safe, they have the chutzpah, the audacity, to claim to care about Jewish safety. And we also have to reckon with the fact that anti-Semitism from outside the Erev Rav are pointed to us like projectiles, and while anti-Semitism inside our Erev Rav, inside our movements, are like ticking time bombs. And there is a debate between how big or small those bombs are, but a bomb is a bomb, and they are bombs we will and must diffuse together with all systems of hate and bigotry. The Erev Rav who sought liberation together isn't an old story that symbolizes something by other people. It is us right now. It's not a story just about Jews, because the story of Jews is and always has been the story of the mixed multitudes from all walks of life. And that's what the Erev Rav means. It's a story of what we will do together and can only do together. And it's really important that we remind ourselves of our power, like when we march on Saturday, that we walk towards those trials together, knowing our faith traditions equipped us with everything we need to win in this moment. Our ancestors who transported our traditions across generations by word and in writing, in public and hidden when they had to be, they did so for us for this moment, and so we must listen. And it is we, all of us together, who can stand in the way of today's pharaohs. So let's stay there so we can create the future where we can all truly be safe and thrive, no matter who we are, how we pray, where we're from, or who we love. The future, also known as that promised land. Thank you so much for inviting me to be with you all tonight. Handing it back to you, Paul.
Thank you to our four religious leaders. I feel very blessed, and I feel like I'm convicted by all of you. I am like very grateful. So we are now going to turn to two wonderful individuals who we are honored to welcome to this to this call. Part of the wonderful moment that we're in is the openness and the excitement about being with one another, that isn't like just faith communities coming together and just that this is a moment when we actually really recognize that we need one another. And so I have been so grateful for both Rana and Leah for, and I have to do much better introductions than that. Sorry, that is too
Great. You're
informal.
doing excellent.
That is too informal. Sorry, you are very exalted. Rana
Oh,
Epstein, Executive Director of Move On, Leah Greenberg, Co-Executive Director of Indivisible. Let me start with gratitude to both of you and look forward to hearing your wisdom. Rana, why don't you start and then Leah? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paul. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. And Leah and I are basically going to talk about what's happening this Saturday, April 5th. And many people have talked about it here tonight. But first, I just want to affirm what you said, which it's that we all need each other in this moment. And we all need to get each other's back. We are stronger in numbers. We are not alone. We are powerful when we come together and we act together. So this is part of that practice, just all of us being here tonight and the hundreds of folks that are joining us. So thank you. Can't begin to tell you how grateful I am for everyone's individual choice that people are making in this moment to not turn away, to not give up, but instead to focus and say, I'm going to stay in this and I'm going to move forward and I'm going to stand up for my community. So that wasn't what I planned to say, but that's kind of what spoke from my heart as I heard all these wonderful folks say such inspiring words of wisdom today. Okay, I'm going to talk to you about how we're coming together to stand up for our families, our communities, our country, and how we got to this point and what we have planned next. And most importantly, me and Lee are going to talk more about what folks can do as we head into Saturday and beyond. So, as people have mentioned, Saturday's hands-off day of action, it's happening. And you guys, it's going to be the largest single day of protest since Trump was inaugurated this year. As of this morning, we have over 430,000 RSVPs. I'm sure that number has grown since this morning. And we expect that number to keep climbing between now and Saturday. I mean, I'm hearing stories anecdotally out of the woodwork of, people in cafes saying, hey, are you going, that don't know each other, walking up to each other, say, hey, are you going to this hands-off protest on Saturday? I have colleagues in San Diego that maybe have never protested before. I should say my husband has colleagues in San Diego that have never protested before, and they're ready to come out, and they're sending it to their friends and family members because something's happening here in this country, right? Something is happening. Just 10 weeks ago, we honestly didn't know what the appetite would be for people wanting to take to the streets or to protest or to show up in person to stand up for justice, to stand up for our rights, to stand up for our country. We didn't know how people would feel. And if we remember that first day Trump got in office, I don't know, it was pretty depressing. And I was looking around, I think people were pretty depressed, not ready to take action. But so we knew that was going to happen. We knew it would look different than it did 8 years ago. We knew that given the devastating loss in this election, we had to help our people. We had to help people make meaning of the moment and provide folks an opportunity to move from that grief into action and be patient and be supportive and provide opportunities when people are ready to act, be able to provide that support to make it easy for people to make their voices heard. So since his inauguration, Trump has taken, as we've seen, a wrecking ball to our government, our freedoms, our public services, our democracy through executive order after executive order. We're seeing, which many are not legal, we're seeing them, just shred or attempt to shred the very fabric of our country and use every tool they can to consolidate power. I don't need to get into it. Many folks have named what they're trying to do, but their goal in flooding us with all these attacks, these threats, these tariffs now, their goal is to break us, to make us give up, to say it's too much, I can't handle it. It's to make the majority of people who oppose this feel helpless and hopeless and alone, and there's no plan. But there is a plan. The plan is us. We solidly believe we cannot give in to hopelessness. We are not helpless, and we can together push back. We can fight back. We can come back. as long as we stick together. And while things are still dire, I still have hope. I believe all the folks here that showed up tonight give me hope. I believe the folks that have been protesting in their town halls give me hope. The people that have been organizing marches in their communities give me hope. The people that have been organizing boycotts give me hope. The people that decided, I'm going to run for office. I can't sit around and watch this anymore, give me hope. So we are the agents of hope. Just like Senator Booker, the last 25-hour speech on the Senate floor, refusing to stand down to talk about the threats of this administration and not allow for Trump and Musk to get away with it. That gives me hope. So what are we going to do about it? Thousands of actions have taken place over the last 10 weeks. They've been all over the country. They've been organized by folks that are just upset and want to do something. And organizations like Bend the Arc and Move On and Indivisible and dozens of others, we're there to support the people to make their voices heard, and that's our role. So I'm going to pass it to Leah to talk about what this Saturday means. After all those thousands of actions, what is this one day of action? We're all going to come together and show our power. What does that mean, and what's in store?
Thank you, Rana. And I will just, I think, harmonize with your comments and say, it's good to be here with you all tonight. And it is inspiring to see so many folks organizing and preparing and thinking about how we will each individually come together on Saturday. We're in a moment when people and institutions are showing us who they are, right? In moments of strain, in moments of fear, in moments of darkness. Some people are stepping forward and some people are pulling back. And I think I am not the only person on this call, I'm sure, who's been deeply disappointed by some of the more powerful institutions in our society choosing to move into a posture of obedience, choosing to bow before the would-be kings of this administration. And also, when some people do that, other people rise up. Other people stop say no. And faith communities and faith leaders have always been on the forefront of telling the story of what is really happening, of calling us into our higher selves, of saying, this might be who we are this moment, but this is not who we should be. This is not who we can be. And so I'm really proud to be coming together with you. I am really proud to be coming together with literally hundreds of thousands of people. Just to give you a sense of how fast this is moving, my talking points, which were done this morning, say 250,000 people. So things are going fast, according to apparently, based on the overall number of people who are showing up. We're all coming together and we're going to say hands off. And we're going to talk about what that means to us. We are all of us under threat. We are all of us seeing the wreckage, the devastation, the harm that they are wreaking across our society, from their attacks on vital government services, things that you and I depend on to live decent and dignified lives, to their attacks on public health, on environment, on clean water and clean air, on civil rights, on basic protections in our society, on labor rights, on immigrants, on freedom of speech. We're coming together to say each of us understands that what we value is on the line, and each of us is showing up for each other and saying hands off. And so that is the idea. That is the moment. We believe that this is going to be a powerful moment to summon together everyone who understands that what is happening is wrong. What is happening is not what we can be. What is happening is not what we will accept. And we're really excited to be in that with you. There are over 1,100 events currently on the map. I could go for a while talking about where and how they're happening, but I'll just note there's 11 in Montana alone, over a dozen across Wyoming and Idaho, one on every island in Hawaii, and more than I would have expected across the country or across the world, including some folks in Europe who are showing up and pushing back as well. So it is international. It is everywhere in America, and it reflects the fact that there are so many of us who are going to show who we are, who are going to buck up the people in our society who are saying, maybe there's no choice but to go along, who are going to show them that courage can be contagious. That is what we are doing together. That is what we are going to say. We are not afraid We're going to stand together and we're going to tell them hands off. And that is the moment that we will be in on Saturday.
Go to handsoff2025.com and you can find your event. We want to see you there. And all of us on this call are going to be at one of those events across the country. And I think it'll be a really wonderful opportunity to be in community as well, because isolation in moments like this is not good for any of us.
100%. And I think I just want to give some history to the way this call came together was just the generosity of Rana and Leah and the interest in faith organizing and reaching out to Reverend Liz and to Bishop Royster and saying, like, let's have a conversation and a real openness. And I think that's one of the things I'm so grateful for right now, is just recognizing the power of one another and all that we bring to one another's movement. And so it's just I feel very grateful for both of you for your leadership, but also the way you welcomed in faith communities and recognized the power and value and didn't feel, there's, I'm going to say something a little controversial, but in some progressive circles, there's like a little bit of an allergic reaction to religion.
I agree. And we
want to, it's like, yikes.
We want to overcome the allergy.
Yeah, I love it. Let's it's just the wrong pollen. But I do want to I want to invite maybe Bishop Royster, you might talk about this a little bit. I think it's important to recognize that that there is, and actually, why don't we bring everybody back on screen? There is a religious underpinning of white Christian nationalism that some have mentioned to this administration, to Project 2025 to start with, and then to this administration. And this idea of, which is held by millions of Americans, that Trump is somehow ordained by God to do what he is doing. And they're surrounding him with these images of prayer circles. And so I just think we have to recognize that the faith community that we've assembled here tonight, that is just a smattering of the broad faith community that exists in this country from all different traditions and spiritual but not religious, all sorts of, but there is this core religious support for this administration. And I think, Maria, you would support me in this, in that this is often religion is often used as the rationale and the kind of inspiration. So Bishop Royster, I wonder if you specifically might speak into the challenge we face with a white Christian nationalist support of the Trump, Vance, Musk administration.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go back and be clear that a white Christian nationalism is not Christian. Okay, it's not. It is an idolatrized version of Christianity, and basically, excuse my language here, it is white supremacy pimping Christianity for the sake of getting adherents. And that's literally what it is. And so, but part of the problem is that it has captured mainstream media. It has captured the sentiment of many disgruntled people in this country who do not want to do the hard work of and for those of us who are Christians, from the hard work of the Christian faith, which is to love your neighbor, to pray for those who despitefully use you, right? To love the stranger. Although I don't think that in God's economy there are any strangers. I think we just got siblings we haven't met yet. And so how do we, support our immigrant siblings in this particular moment, right? The Bible says a cattle on 1,000 hills belongs to the Lord. Last time I checked, the hills do too. And although we might have deeds to property, it's only temporary and all belongs to God ultimately. And so that whether people move from one place to the other or not is irrelevant. They're all God's children. We're all God's children. And so how do we see that and respect that? And so part of what Faith in Action has actually been doing over the last 3 or 4 years has been doing major studies around white Christian nationalism and understanding that it's not new. It's over 500 years old. It's deeply rooted in Christian tradition. And it's been really a colonial mindset that has been adapted for this particular moment in time. Yeah. And so we're fighting against that, but we have to build a new faith narrative, right? We've got to tell a new story about faith in this country. And it can't always be about what we're against, because the problem is that they're telling people what they're for. It's all wrong, but they're telling people what they're for. We have to tell people what God is for, what faith is for, how faith is welcoming, inclusive, how it's building, it's empowering, it's liberating, it's setting people free, how it's loving on people and not hating on people, which is really what this story is being told. And we've got to reiterate that over and over again, get above the fray and get above the media sound bites and everything else to tell that story and reiterate it. But the best way to reiterate it is in our one-to-one daily contact with the people that are around us, in our communities, in our neighborhoods, in our schools, our workplaces, on the bus stops and places like that. We reiterate it over and over again, doing one-to-ones, building relationships with people, especially who don't look, sound, or think anything like us.
Thank you so much for that. Maria, we started with you, and I'd love to kind of give you some of the final words. We just have a few moments left. But I do think this question of how a multi-faith movement for justice and love and inclusion can in some ways pierce this seeming inevitability of a faith supporting autocratic movements around the world.
I mean, I think the strongest antidote to faith-based authoritarianism and white Christian nationalism is people of faith participating and actively showing themselves to be part of a pro-democracy movement, a movement for freedom, justice, and the real meaning of Christianity in the case of white Christian nationalism. It is being on the streets. It is being at soup kitchens. It is, organizing in different ways. It is in participating in walkouts and sit-ins and explaining that from the position of faith, like not being shy or bashful, being in public. And explaining why you're doing what you're doing based on your faith. And I think the more that people can see that this is actually the mainstream position, that, fighting for basic justice, equal protection under the law, economic justice, that this is the norm, then people will be inspired by it. Courage is contagious, but it's like words are important. Actions speak so much louder than words. And when people see others in movement, in motion, I think that can make all the difference. That's what I would offer.
Thank you so much. And I know I'm speaking for the entire assembly here. Thank you to this group so much for your wisdom. Each one of you, I could spend 3 hours with talking, and you were so concise and precise and loaded with information. I hope everyone listening feels gratified. I'm going to add one more thing to the mix, which is Interfaith Alliance is doing faith-led town halls. We're actually partnering with many people, including Faith in Action and some of the other groups on this call, about faith leaders, making sure that our representatives show up for to their constituents and answer questions. And if they won't show up, we will still hold faith-led town halls talking about morality and moral clarity in this moment. So if you're interested, there is more in the chat. Everyone, April 5th, Saturday, I look forward to seeing you all out there, and we can have glorious moments even in the midst of terribly difficult times. It's so important, but the only way we will do that is coming together in moments like this and out there among all of you. So thank you so much for this time, and bless you all, and I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Who do you know who would get a lot out of this discussion? Please share The State of Belief with them, and be sure to subscribe to The State of Belief at Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast platform. We need your help to keep making The State of Belief. Please make a financial contribution today at stateofbelief.com. That's stateofbelief.com. The views and opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily reflect those of Religion News Service or Religion News Foundation. The State of Belief is produced by Ray Kirstein and is a production of Interfaith Alliance. Become a member of Interfaith Alliance today at interfaithalliance.org. And be sure to join us next week. I can't wait. We have Reverend Dr. Michael Eric Dyson with us. Until then, I'm Paul Brandeis Raushenbush on The State of Belief, where religion and democracy meet.